So I said, you mean like Groucho Marx? And then she says, I don't know. I never saw the Three Stooges.
Ye gads.
Yeah, but what can you do? Did you ever see that movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Yes. Tarantino, yes. Sharon Tate, yes. Bradley Pitt, yes. Leonardo DiCaprio, yes.
Well, did it ever occur to you? I mean, you could argue that pretty much all of Tarantino's movies are commentaries on filmmaking. Each one is stuffed fuller than a Thanksgiving turkey with allusions to the films that inspired him to make movies. Not to mention those moments in Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, Django Unchained that feel like reflections on the actor's process. But in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Tarantino brings it to the next level. It's not just his characters and their story that serves as a rumination on the filmmaking process, though of course these gentlemen are directly employed by the film industry. It's everything from the narrative structure to the editing style. I mean, the whole damn picture is a meditation on what it means to be in a movie, to make a movie, to see a movie. Now, you might criticize some Tarantino films as style over substance, as the excesses of a postmodern hipster too obsessed with his legacy to remember how to craft a compelling narrative. But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood now, that's something special.
Yes.
This video is sponsored by Trifectura Home Products, your source for hardware, housewares, cleaning products, and office supplies. The Trident Rewards program offers you something that other online retailer memberships simply don't. Status. I mean, can you imagine telling your friends and family that you finally achieved gold membership status with the Junka Sandwiches Heroes Club? Lame sauce. But with the Trident Rewards program from Trifectura, you'll feel like you just won the House Cup for Higglesport. Or, whatever that magician's college was in those Henry Porter movies. The Trident Rewards program, only from Trifectura. Now, let's get into it. Hold up. Before we get started, if you're like 1 month ago me and you haven't seen this one yet, you may want to watch it before going any further. I know, the movie's a year old, but just in case. Now, if you were eavesdropping on my friends in the next room, first of all, shame on you. Seriously, have you no manners?
Go home to your mother!
But secondly, you have a pretty good idea of where this video is headed. On the one hand, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood centers on the people who work in the film industry, so of course it's about movies. But beyond that, the way Tarantino tells the story in itself asks us to consider the very nature of cinema and of the industry that creates it. By building his narrative around the friendship between an actor and his stunt double, Tarantino is already pointing out the stark difference between the myth of Hollywood and the reality behind it.
Whoa.
Rick Dalton is famous for playing a tough bounty hunter in a Western television series, but it's actually Cliff who takes the risks, performing the physically demanding parts of Rick's various roles. Meanwhile, off camera, it's Rick who reaps the rewards of their collaborative work. He's got the swanky modern house with the pool,
That was Roman Polanski.
while Cliff lives in a rundown trailer behind a drive-in, outside the city. When they travel, Rick always flies first class, leaving Cliff stuck back in coach. It's a glimpse of the sausage factory at work, with all of its inequalities. Tarantino explores a second dichotomy by weaving his fictional story of a has-been actor and his loyal stuntman against the backdrop of real historical events, namely the murder of Sharon Tate by members of the Manson family. See, most of the characters in this second storyline are representations of Tate's real associates and actual members of the Manson cult. The historical events are widely known, at least vaguely, and anybody curious about what really happened can find the information pretty easily online. So for the first part of the film, it's easy to recognize the line between the made-up stuff and the facts. But as the film progresses, the lines get more and more blurred. For one thing, the film toys with our expectations of genre. Cliff's story, in particular, flows between shades of Western, horror, and crime thriller. The movie keeps priming us for the expected revelations and confrontations of those genres, only to fizzle in an anticlimax. I think this is intentional, as it suggests a certain everyday realness to these scenes. It's like Tarantino is saying, don't look for genre plot points in this story. It's not a story, man, it's real life. The lines also blur in the opposite direction. Most of the time, it's easy to differentiate Rick's performances on television from his real life. Tarantino uses different aspect ratios and film grains, and he even shows some clips playing on a TV screen to indicate that these are not the real world of the film. But when we finally get to see Rick at work, the sequences feel very different. Everything is filmed exactly the same as the real world. Nothing looks fake or hokey. None of the actors seem like the bottom-of-the-barrel guys that usually played on 60s television. If you walked in on someone watching these scenes without any context, you'd probably assume the movie was a Western. Against our will, we get caught up in the drama of those scenes and in the story that they hint at, even though they're not real in the context of the film. We're probably not even aware that it's happened until Rick suddenly falters during a line and,
Line? Go fetch her and tell her what?
Probably not even aware of it, then Rick forgets his line, something interesting. We're probably not even aware of it, but then Rick forgets his line.
Go fetch her and tell her what?
Something interesting happens here. In most movies featuring a movie within the movie, this would be the point where the camera would pull back, revealing the crew standing nearby. But Tarantino opts to hold the shot on Rick as someone off camera prompts him. There's no cut, we just keep rolling. In fact, except for a brief shot or two, the physical presence of the crew is never even hinted at during these sequences.
And cut!
The illusion cracks a little when Rick flubs his dialogue, but it never fully crumbles.
Could we just cut?
These sequences remain almost real within the world of the film. For the actors in those scenes, they are real, much as the commode story in Reservoir Dogs becomes real to Mr. Orange. All of this blurs the line between fiction and historical fact for the audience. We may know intellectually that Rick and Cliff and their lives are not real in the same way that Sharon Tate and Charles Manson are, but in the moment, we don't feel that difference. We're too absorbed into the reality of the film. And yet, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is, in fact, a work of fiction.
I'm Sharon Tate.
Despite encouraging us to feel the whole thing as the truest of truths, Tarantino also sprinkles signposts throughout the film that we shouldn't do that. Margot Robbie, as Sharon Tate, enters a theater and settles in to watch herself in The Wrecking Crew. But rather than reshoot moments from that film with Robbie as Sharon Tate, as he did with DiCaprio in the Great Escape scenes earlier in the film, Tarantino instead leaves the Wrecking Crew footage intact. This was probably done to pay tribute to Tate's memory, but it also adds a layer of unreality to the scene. One of these women is clearly Sharon Tate. The other is not. The film's climax is also an obvious departure from reality.
Can I help you?
Recognizing Rick when they arrive on Cielo Drive, members of the Manson family decide to murder the people in his house before moving on to their assignment next door. It doesn't work out so well for them. But here's the thing. By the time we reach the big confrontation, we're so caught up in the world of the story that I don't think anybody is actually disappointed to see things swerve so far from the historical record. It's a fantastic sequence, as Cliff manages to more than hold his own despite being higher than a kite the whole time. And you can also read the scene symbolically. This isn't just two middle-aged men winning a physical victory over the stabby murder hippies. It's also two fading stars making their last stand against a culture that is rapidly leaving them behind and coming out on top just one more time. In the aftermath, Rick gets invited into the Polanski residence to meet Sharon and her friends. It's a really sweet moment. Things are looking up for, well, potato. That pulls the rug right out from under you, doesn't it? We've gotten so invested in this story and in these characters that for a minute, we forgot the reality outside the film. Sharon Tate was murdered by the Manson family, along with the friends who'd been with her at her home on August 8th of 1969. Nobody saved her. And guys like Rick Dalton, nobody saved them either. In reality, he probably would have continued playing villains and bit parts on television, watching his star grow dimmer and dimmer until it winked out. There are no second acts in American lives. This ending, it sure feels good. But it's just once upon a time. Just a fairy tale. And now that it's over, we're back in the real world. As with any other bedtime story, we're left wondering what it means. Is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood just an academic exercise, a demonstration of the absorptive power of a cinematic story well told? Or is it maybe about the real people who work in the Hollywood Dream Factory, a celebration of them as real people with hopes and struggles and lives beyond the perfect existence that the audience can see? Something to think about as you drift off. Good night, film dorks. Good night.